Welcome to another edition of the Mile High Real Estate Spotlight Podcast. And I'm your host, Brian Arnold. I'm so excited. Today has been a great day. There's been just so many different things happening, people to be able to talk to, and being out in the community. And if you, no matter what, I can say this whenever day you're watching it, I can probably guarantee it's a beautiful day in Colorado, which is, we don't have too many bad ones here. And today I get to talk to Trevor Shoulders today, real estate agent that has been doing this for a long time. Started out in our business as a receptionist. Here from Colorado, he went to a high school in Colorado. Originated out of California, and just as we're talking, just wanting to make sure that do he can do everything possible to make sure that he's helping people get in and out of real estate, whether it's on the buy side or the sell side. He knows his stuff, and so one of the things about this podcast that I want to make sure that is unique that you know about is, I'm not just talking to people who just kind of sit around and think about I'm in real estate. It's people who are actually going out and doing it and helping clients and helping people get their dreams. Because you think as a house, it's your number one most of the time, the biggest asset that you'll ever own. Unless you have a large business or $1 billion business. For most of us, this is not just a decision that's super easy all the time. It's something that takes a while. And I'll say this, now I'll say this and in, you can do this if you're a first time home buyer. And it's something that every person deserves to have, that is in America. And then we look at, let the experts help you. And so me being in lending and Trevor being on the real estate side, there is so much help out there right now to help you get your dreams. And so today, Trevor and I are really just going to, we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to talk about, where the market's at. We're going to talk about his, where he came from, and how he got going in the business. And what I think you'll find is that this is a person I can trust. This is a person who's going to help me get to where I want to be, and this is a person that I want to spend time with as I go and look at houses and find the house that's right for me, because that's one of the things as a consumer, I guess, is that you're going to want to make sure that you're going to want to be with the person you're going to spend time with, because you are going to spend some time with them. I hate to tell you that it isn't, buying a house isn't a one day thing. Even if you have cash, it's not a one day deal. So Trevor, thank you for being on. I'm so excited that you are part of being on the Mile High Real Estate Spotlight podcast. And if you could just tell everybody how to get a hold of you, and then after that, maybe kind of give a little bit of your background. I would love for that.
Thanks for having me. I really do appreciate the opportunity. As my first podcast, it's kind of exciting. Yeah, you can reach me. My wife and I, I'm the owner broker of Dream Space Brokers Realty. And it's basically just my wife and I as a husband-wife team. And you can reach us or take a look at our company at indenverrealestate.com. And you can reach me on my telephone all the time, 303-641-4128. Or email me at trevor@dreamspacebrokers.com.
All right, that's cool. Kind of tell us how'd you get started in this? Why real estate? Why not other things that you've pursued in your life? Why is this the love?
It's a good question. I actually, what I was telling you right before we started here is when I was in high school, I ended up, because I always wanted a job. Like at a young age, I had a paper route when I was like 8, and I just kind of always had a job since I was about 8. Just been kind of like a working mode type of a person as my upbringing. My dad was a fighter pilot, so it's like they just kind of like instilled upon me, the work ethic from a young age. So when I was moving to Boulder, the agent who had helped us find my parents a house when we were relocating from California, she said, I bet you I could get you a job at our real estate office, because we just lost our receptionist. And lo and behold, I became the receptionist at 15 years old, setting up shows. It was funny, back in the day, it was 1990. They had a CB at the office, and we would use the CB with agents driving around, because a lot of them didn't have cell phones or anything like that. And if they had a cell phone, it's that big giant brick one.
Mm-hmm.
So we do like CB communications with showing
Well,
instructions.
like Breaker 19, I found a house. Breaker 19.
Yeah. I'd be setting up the showings via CV, and then the MLS books, because we had the books. There was no internet, so it's just a complete different ball of wax. Obviously, seeing the changes from how the inner workings from 1990 till now, have been. It's just kind of an amazing. An amazing evolution, to see from back then.
Oh my
So that's
God.
how it started.
Yeah, no, I just think back, like, a lot of the folks that I interview, or a lot of people that I talk to, or even some of the younger millennials that are buying houses now. You like, yeah, we used to have to drive around and use a map to figure out where we're going. And then
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. When I
what's the
started,
map?
as a realtor, 2000, started with a map, Pearson Graphics map book with the little dots, and like labeling all the dots. And it's funny. I tell people this all the time: is I used to know where everything was because I was accustomed to, you'd have to learn all the neighborhoods before you go out, so you're not driving around in circles like an idiot with your clients in the car, right? And you didn't have GPS, so it's like you had to know where you're going. And now it's funny, like if my phone goes out, I'm dumbed down. I'm like, I don't know where to go. I don't have a map in my car. It's ridiculous.
Where's that neighborhood?
Right. It's like just throw back to.
Oh my gosh, and we actually knew phone numbers, which is like there was like 10 phone numbers, at least that many in my head, if not 20. That if I
Absolutely.
needed to call somebody, I could.
Totally. Yeah. So it's just funny, like, how the challenges back then were different than the challenges of today. And there's always an interesting challenge. And, we always thought all of this technology would put us realtors out of a business or, out of a job. But
Yeah.
it's kind of funny how, the enhancements have also created nuance to our jobs that make it more challenging in different ways. So, like I said, it's an interesting evolution how things have gone.
Yeah, well, you think of even like signing, having an application that somebody's going to buy or sell a house, right? And having to actually write that and having to actually get real signatures on it, and meeting with somebody at a restaurant or something to have them sit down and,
chasing around 4 copies, chasing around the 4 originals. Like, where's the 4 originals? One for the seller, one for the buyer, one for the listing agent, one for the selling agent. There's all those 4 originals, and if you lost them, you're like, oh no, so it's just weird, I feel like we're spoiled these days.
And now it's finding like junk mail, where it's in your junk mail. You got to find it. You got to dig it out. You got to find it. So, really, really kind of fun. Oh wow, sorry about that. I don't know if you heard that beep. What could a potential buyer expect from you?
Well, what we pride ourselves on, my wife and I have basically a rule that we're always available. So we don't, and I know it's probably not good for work-life balance, but we are always available 365, 24/7. We do deals on vacation, and we do deals on, Christmas Eve or, Thanksgiving, and, all of the different times where deals may or may not happen for some people, or they're stressed out about things. We always try to be available. I feel like that's really the pinnacle of the first expectation that someone would want to have in their real estate agent, just because it's time sensitive, and I feel like when people are in the mode of wanting to buy or sell their home, they're in an urgent mode. They're stressed. If they want a house, they're really excited about it. If they're selling a house, they might be stressed about selling it. So, always being there really to, just to be available and to be responsive. I think that's the first and foremost quality, and everything kind of comes after that.
Yeah. And I love to hear that, because it can be so stressful. You think that, buying a house should be, I would even say a car, but a car could be just as stressful in the dealership for 4 hours. Yeah, I can remember them days.
More annoying, right?
More annoying than anything. But you can't get a house in one day. A house is going to take 30 days. And me on the lending side, it can even be even more stressful, because I'm asking you stuff that is personal. I'm asking you stuff that is no other person on the planet should ever be asking you these things. And the bank wants to know it. And the bank wants to hold you accountable to, some of these things. And and I get this all the time. Why do you want that? Why do you need this? And I think on the selling side, when you're taking people around and you're trying to find the right home, and they don't like this aspect of it. Why can't you find me a home in this aspect? Or then you get to the inspection stage where the inspector comes and says, you know what, there are tree branches in the sewer line. And you're like, well, do I want this or do I not want this? Or,
Yeah.
the foundation has this little issue. Do you want to deal with it or not? And there's all these things that just pile on day after day. And, people go through their normal life, right? They do the things that they're doing all the time. And then we're asking them sometimes to stop doing it.
Mm.
Oh no, the 10 commandments of buying a home, do not go buy a car. Well, my car broke down, right? It's on
Yeah.
the side of the road. Like, what am I supposed to do for the next 30 days? And I'm yelling at them, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of neat to see that is something that you hold yourself accountable for, and that you say, hey, no, this is important. How do we be available at any of those times when those things come up? And I think that's super special. And with that, when I think of superpowers, and I kind of asked you that in the beginning, could you just tell us what superpower do you wish you had, and then what do you think you and your wife's superpower is within the business?
Oh, what would be my superpower? I feel like in my personal superpower, like in my own time, I wish. That's a really good question, actually. I wish I was a savant musician.
Okay.
Um, so, I've been playing drums in punk rock bands for 30 years, and I just recently picked up DJ. So I DJ bass music
Oh,
and
cool.
punk rock drumming. So what I wish my superpower was the discipline back when 30 years ago, to really have the discipline to dig into the material. So I was just a monster right now, because you look back, you're almost 50, you're like, man, if I would have just been like my kids' age, paying attention to lessons, right? You know what I mean? Like, if
Oh,
I
I
knew
know.
what I knew now, I feel like my superpower, uh, I feel like that would be what I guess that wouldn't describe what my superpower is. I mean, I think my superpower that I have or that I possess would be empathy.
Okay.
I like to maintain empathy really in any situation. I feel like no matter how bad somebody could come off to be, or angry, or sad, or I just feel like I do have a kind of uncanny ability to understand people, or just have the patience to seek to understand people. At least I try my hardest, so I feel like I'm pretty good at that.
And I can see how that could serve you incredibly well in this business, because it is stressful, because people do get angry, because people don't understand, tough concepts sometimes that are part of our process, because we do this every day. And so it becomes second nature. But when we think that folks have never even purchased a house before, or any had anybody in their family purchase a house, and then all of a sudden we're giving them these terminology and these names, to be able to walk alongside them, I think that's a huge superpower that says it's going to be okay. I'm going to take the time. I'm going to explain it to you. And there's so many people in our profession that, even though they're busy, they don't want to bother. They don't want to spend the time. They don't want to take that extra amount of time, and the experience becomes so painful for people. And sometimes it's our fault in our industry. So I absolutely applaud you, for having that as a superpower, and then recognizing that how important that is. That's super super cool.
I feel like a lot of times people just want to be heard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you're being beat up as a buyer or beat up as a seller from the other party, it
Hmm.
can feel like a competition, or it can feel like, somebody's got to lose in order for me to win, or, those kinds of things, or feel like they're giving more than they're receiving, which, in a negotiation, those are super common elements of, thought or feeling. So I feel like people, I don't know about you, probably similarly in your businesses. I feel like a lot of times when people are frustrated, they need to vent their grievances, and then once you talk through it and then talk them down back into the pool of meaning, right? It's like, okay, now let's get back to like the brass tacks here. What are we trying to do? We're trying to just sell or buy.
Hmm.
Once people get it out, then they feel better, and then they oftentimes are apologizing. Like, I'm really sorry, and I'm like, you don't have to apologize to me.
Yeah.
Like, this is like what we're supposed to do, is like guide you through. You know what I mean? Guide you through your emotions, along with
Hmm.
like our job as realtors is to separate the emotions from the business, but be in touch with those emotions. I think they run high, and hot sometimes.
Yeah. It is so amazing when you start thinking about how people don't buy a house every week. They don't buy a house every month. This might be one time in a lifetime, or or two or three times in a lifetime, if if they're doing some investment property and stuff. And it gets easier the more you do. But those emotions that come up all the time. I'm a chaplain at one of the rehab hospitals down here, and when I'm so happy to be at the rehab hospital, because by the time they get to the hospital I'm at, they already know their diagnosis. They already know what they got to do to get better. They already know what their physical therapy is. Sometimes I have to go over to the real hospital, where all the emergency room is. And that is so crazy, because the emotions of, I've never had my dad have a heart attack before. I don't know what's going on. I need somebody to answer. And then folks that are not around, like the medical staff that's around, is working on their dad. So they don't have time to answer that. And I
Yeah.
kind of liken that to this whole process here.
Yeah.
Like you said, you got to be heard. You got to have the ability, to sit down and just listen. So that's so cool. Let's move over to the market right now. So I hear all these things in the market. I'm in it, and people are just like scratching their head, and they're just going, what do I do? How do I navigate this? I want to buy a home, because I talk about this a lot. Where where you are at right now, about how much does an apartment go for per month? Like, where you generally are helping people in.
Well,
Whatever.
I mean, geez, it doesn't seem like you can get anything, even like a room in a house or an apartment, for less than 800, $1,000 a month, which is kind of crazy. I feel like, just a small studio, you're looking at minimum 1,500 a month, and for anything 2 bedroom or higher is going to be somewhere, I mean, 22 to $3,000, and it's kind of staggering how expensive rent.
It really is. And so you go, okay, so if I do, $2,500 a month for a rental, then after a year, I paid 30 grand.
Yeah,
And then if I do that and stay in there for 10 years, I've now done $300,000 that I've given a landlord.
yeah,
And you start thinking, can I do that? With our market where it's at right now, I'm not saying, it's way cheaper to buy than to rent, but at the same time, that ownership thing, what if I were to have that same $300,000 going into something that is mine? Because you're going to pay somebody's rent, right? You're either going to pay yours or somebody else's. If you're paying, if you're
that's
paying,
what's happening. Your rent is paying someone else's mortgage.
you're going to pay somebody else's mortgage. And so, for people who are waiting on the fence or thinking they can't do it, I was telling the last person in the podcast that, as I specialize in, down payment assistance, this is almost the best time that I can remember, where there's so much money for down payment assistance that can get somebody in stuff. If they can afford that note, it's almost like, hey, let's try to figure out how to get you into something. So there's some ownership. And so just kind of your thoughts on, how are you helping people that are in this tough market, or do they believe it's a tough market? How are you talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think, trying to keep our finger on the pulse of, the madness, which is rates right now, or even the causation of rates, is also a little bit, nebulous to predict anything. People are always asking me, what do you think rates are going to do? And I will quickly say, you probably do. It's like, we don't know. We can surmise something, something to the tune, maybe an election year. This is all pontification. I don't know anything, but election year's coming up, so people don't want to, just kill our market with high rates. So they might come down in the next year or two. I feel like a 2-1 buy down, asking sellers to participate in 2-1 buy downs is really good strategy, just on the off chance that, the next year or two, obviously, if our rates can, notch down, that would be great and more attainable for people. Looking at CPI index and, all this, inflation numbers and things like that. Wartime, I mean, God bless the world right now. I mean, trying to stay into a peaceful state. War always does strange things to an economy, whether, for better or for worse, as far as interest or, economies, which, obviously I would much rather have 50% interest than war, but that might be, one of those things that comes up. So, it's always the question is, is it a good time to buy? And it's like, what I tell people is, according to Hoyle, with these rates, it's all relative. It's not great rates, but at the same time, if we were looking at, back when rates were 12% and you notched down to 7%, you'd feel like it was a gift. In 2001, of course, prices were way, way lower, but when I started, interest rates were about 7.25. That was pretty normal. I remember the first time someone hit 5%, it was like this grand, happening. It was like everyone from the title company ran into the room, like, who got a 30-year fixed at 5%? So like, you know what I mean? So it's all relative. And I feel like when people ask me, like, is it a good time to buy? It's like, well, do you need a home? It's like, do you need a home? Are you going to be renting? You're going to be paying your monthly expense anyway. Locking in some equity, paying down a principal at some point is a good way to, build your credit, build equity in something you own, paint walls, remodel something, plant a garden, have some dogs where you don't have to pay a deposit for, you know what I mean? Those kinds of things that offer freedom, beyond, but there's a lot more than just monthly finances. It's like there's a lot of freedom that comes intrinsic with owning your own place. So to answer your question, is like, I always just fall on is like, do you really need a home? And if you need to move, and are you sick of renting? I feel like a lot of people are sick of renting and watching their missed opportunities over the years, right? It's like they said 5 years ago to me, oh man, I'm just not quite ready. But then, now the coulda, woulda, shouldas always will get you. But it's never too late to just jump in, right? It's like, just jump in now. And then 5 or 10 years to be, man, I'm glad. I remember when I thought it was unattainable or a bad idea. You know what I'm saying? So I guess these types of financial decisions are pretty relative, unknowing the future.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, even if, even if your rates are at 7, I think the 3s and the 4s were the fire sale, the clearance sale, we're kind of back to normal right now. But at the same time, you go, if rates are going to go down and I get in now, I can refinance
For
at the lower rate. If rates go up, I might price myself even out of a home right now that I possibly could get right now. And so like I loved your answer is, do you need a home? Because that is really the question. Do you need a home, and then do you want the freedom of having ownership? And there's just something about ownership that opens up all kind of doors that non-ownership doesn't. I hear these things sometimes. Can't remember podcast I was listening to where people saying, well, you need to rent. And then a lot of those folks were like in New York, where there wasn't much opportunity to buy anything that could even come close. Well, yeah. And if you're not going to stay there, but for people here in Colorado that are moving here, that are going here, that, I know there's not, a tremendous amount of inventory, but there is. They're building everywhere. There is that opportunity for people to get in. On my reverse mortgage side, for seniors, I'm finding this is an amazing time for them to use a reverse mortgage when, you think if I can only put half down and then I still have money to live on and I don't make a payment, which makes it really cool for somebody who's saying, maybe I want to downsize, or maybe, my wife died and I can't afford the taxes or insurance or the things that are there. So what, when we think about, your world and what you and your wife do, if somebody were to call you, are there certain areas that you guys just know everything about that are more? Or is it like the whole Denver metro area that somebody could say, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He can take me. He's going to be able to find my house. And how good are you at helping people find the house that they really want?
Well, thanks for asking the question. I don't like to toot my own horn, but we have done, a ton of deals, all over the place. Being a Boulder agent, from the early 2000s into around 2007-ish, I, was very acquainted with the whole Front Range and, Broomfield, Westminster, Erie, Niwot, Longmont, all of those were my stomping grounds. And then I moved, to Denver. What's funny, as I was telling you before, is I lived in Boulder and I was then moving everyone out of Boulder because Boulder was becoming so unattainable that, I was moving into the close-in mountains like Netherland and Cold Creek and, all of those different areas in between in the suburbs. And then getting into the Denver market, I moved to Denver, about, 13, 15 years ago or something. then further that radius became bigger from Denver, the affordability radius, or how that is. It's like, back when Denver, I called it the $250,000 radius. It was like, what could you buy a $250,000 house for?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like in Denver, it was like, right here, and then now it's here, and then here, and then here. Now you just can't. So it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's weird. So as that radius expanded from, just affordability or inventory purposes, I became expert, in the outlying areas, Henderson, Brighton, Castle. I've been doing a lot of Castle Rock, Castle Pines, sold a house in Elizabeth, all the way up to Windsor, Fort Collins, so I went to college in Fort Collins, so I know Loveland and Fort Collins area is pretty good too. So, if I don't know an area, it's really quick that I'll learn it,
Mm-hmm.
and I've just been so accustomed to understanding how to learn areas and figuring out the nuance of them, that I've got so much experience that, there's really nothing, there's no, territory that is scary to me, and if it is, and if I don't feel comfortable, I always refer it, like up in the mountains, like, Summit County and things like that. Once you get up into ski towns and, those types of places, basically beyond Genesee or Evergreen or
Mm-hmm.
Conifer, that's where I'll stop. I mean, I sold a house in Pine, but you know what I mean? Like right when it's beyond that, and I don't have any kind of confidence, I will definitely refer if I just feel like I'm out of my league. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah, I can see Pine being perfectly in your Billy Wagon, but when you think of like Aspen or Vale or Copper,
I know nothing about it. It's a whole different world, man.
that's an insane world right there. That's like a different, on different planet than
it's different everything. Yeah, different state, different planet, different, different vibe, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, and here's what I'm hearing, and I want people to really hear and listen to what Trevor has done a ton of deals over the last 23 years. And so if there's something he hasn't seen, I would be very surprised. If there is an issue that he can't overcome, I would be very surprised. And so when you're looking for somebody who can get you the actual house that you want in the neighborhood that you want, Trevor would be a person that I would call. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with brand new real estate agents and people are trying to figure it out and people are going. But there are some people that you just want to go, wait a minute, I just want to get this done. I want to make sure that
the thing is being accustomed to dealing with it, right? It's just like in your business as a lender, every hiccup or everything that's thrown at you just sharpens the blade of like how to deal with that issue. I humbly go into every transaction saying there's a bunch of stuff I could learn today because new problems exist every day. You know what I mean? Like, gosh, it was something I just learned the other day. I'm like, I have literally never heard of that before. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, never even just plain heard of it. And hopefully I'll think about it because it was just one of those things. I'm like, why have I never heard of this before? And the other agent hadn't heard of this before. And you know what I mean? I was like, weird, so those things do happen. So I think it's just being accustomed and unwavering when it comes to challenges. You're like, okay, well, let's just figure this out. Like it's not rocket science,
Absolutely. Well, we're kind of running down at the time, and what I would love to do, I know it goes so fast, it really does. I would love to have you back and maybe have your wife on and maybe have one or two of your clients that would be willing to, really kind of talk about the experience that they had and what they enjoyed and, things that you don't even know that you do, that your client goes, yeah, he did this and he did it well and he did it often. So if you're willing to do that, I'd love to have you back in maybe 3 or 4 months. We can recap, but I'd love for you to make sure you tell everybody how to get a hold of you one more time. And then any closing thoughts that you'd want everybody to know as we kind of close this out.
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. I really am grateful, for taking your time with me and sharing. You can reach us at indenverrealestate.com, 303-641-4128, or you can just email me at trevor@dreamspacebrokers.com. Parting thought is, love to work with you, and we just work on 100% satisfaction basis. It's 5 stars or no stars. You know what I'm saying? So that's just how we roll. It's like you're either having a wonderful time or we're not meant to be together. You know what I mean? And yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity to work with anybody who takes the time to give us the opportunity to help them. You know, we enjoy that.
I love that. 5 stars or no stars.
That's
That
it.
is that is the
That
way to go. I love it. So thank you for being here for another edition of the Mile High Real Estate Spotlight podcast. I'm again Brian Arnold, and just those 3 things again. You can do this. If you don't think you can do it, whether it's even I want to get an investment property, or I want to upsize or downsize or whatever, you can do this. You deserve this, and let us help you do it. And if you let us help you do it, I promise you the experiences will be much better than trying to do it by yourself. So you guys have a wonderful, awesome, incredible, awestruck day today, and we'll look forward to talking to you at the next one.
Thanks again, Brian. Take care.